What if the most dangerous thing in your life is something you can't hear? No noise, not silence, but the absence of a voice you were meant to hear, one that guides, warns, and protects you from the inside out. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff and someone screams your name to pull you back, but you're deaf to it. That's what happens when you become spiritually deaf. You might think you're in control, making your own choices, chasing success, love, happiness, but what if you're running fast in the wrong direction? What if every opportunity you missed, every relationship that felt off, every storm you didn't see coming, was because you ignored the one voice that could have warned you? Here's the truth. The universe, God, your higher self, whatever you believe in, always speaks. But most people drown it out with noise. Social media, opinions, stress, ego. Slowly you stop listening. And without realizing it, you lose your way. This isn't just a spiritual problem, it's a life problem. But here's the catch. Once you become deaf to that voice, you don't just lose spiritual connection. You lose clarity, direction, peace, and sometimes purpose itself. Stay with me till the end, because I'm going to show you exactly how to recognize the signs that you've become spiritually deaf. And most importantly, how to turn your ears back on. The cost of not listening is far too high, but the reward for waking up, it could change everything. So ask yourself this: when was the last time you truly listened to something deeper than your thoughts? Because right now something is trying to reach you, and you can't afford to miss it. You can be surrounded by noise, opinions, even motivation, and still feel completely lost inside. That's not confusion. That's spiritual deafness. It happens when you stop hearing the voice within, the one that gently nudges you toward what's right, what's meaningful, what's true. This isn't about religion. It's about awareness. Your spirit, soul, or inner compass, whatever you choose to call it, was designed to guide you. But when you ignore it long enough, it starts to fade, until one day you don't even realize it's missing. You become spiritually deaf when you rely only on the outer world to make decisions. Logic, trends, emotions, peer pressure, they become your guides. And while these things can help, they aren't built to replace the inner voice. That voice is quiet, calm, and deeply personal. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And the problem is, most people are too distracted to hear it. Think about it. Have you ever had a strong gut feeling telling you not to trust someone, but you ignored it and regretted it later? That's your spirit trying to speak. The more you ignore those moments, the less frequent they become. Eventually you start making choices that feel empty, even when they look successful from the outside. Some signs that you're spiritually deaf are subtle, but powerful. You constantly seek validation from others, because you can't trust your own sense of direction. You feel a strange emptiness, even when life is fine. You numb yourself with distractions, scrolling, binge-watching, chasing highs, because silence feels uncomfortable. You no longer reflect, pray, meditate, or ask deeper questions like, why am I really here? Worst of all, you stop recognizing signs, those little synchronicities, or gut instincts that once felt magical. You begin to live on autopilot, disconnected from your purpose, unaware of the bigger picture. But here's the good news. Deafness doesn't mean dead. You can still tune back in. You can still restore the connection, because the voice never left. It's just waiting for you to listen again. It doesn't happen overnight. Spiritual deafness creeps in slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed. One day you're in tune with your inner world. The next you're drowning in noise without even realizing it. It often starts with distraction, not just the obvious ones, phones, social media, endless notifications, but the subtle ones too, the constant need to stay busy, to always be doing, achieving, chasing. Modern life rewards productivity, not presence. So we move faster, scroll longer, and fill every empty space with noise. In that chaos, the quiet voice of the spirit, the one that speaks in stillness, gets silenced. And without silence, there's no space to hear it. Then comes the trap of logic. Society praises facts, science, rational thinking. And while these are powerful tools, they were never meant to replace inner knowing. You're taught to only believe what you can prove, measure, or monetize. Intuition? That's seen as unreliable. Faith, often labeled as foolish. Slowly, your inner guidance system gets overridden by what makes sense on paper, not what feels right in your soul. So you start living in your head. Every decision must be calculated. Every risk must be justified. Every dream must be practical. But the spirit doesn't speak in spreadsheets. It speaks in feelings, nudges, synchronicities, and sudden knowing. And when you ignore those long enough, they stop showing up. You also start to suppress the nudges, the gentle taps from something higher that say, this isn't for you, or take that leap. You feel them, but you push them down. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being different. These fears become louder than your truth. And when you silence your truth, often enough, you begin to forget what it even sounds like. Spiritual deafness doesn't begin with a rejection of the divine. It begins with 1,000 tiny choices to listen to everything but the divine. By the time you realize it, your decisions feel hollow, your direction feels uncertain, and you don't know whether the life you're living is truly yours. But awareness is the first step back. Once you see the silence, you can start to listen again. The voice within never left. It's just waiting for you to turn down the volume of the world. On the outside, everything might seem fine. You wake up, go to work, meet people, make decisions, but inside something feels off, like a radio playing static instead of music. That's the hidden cost. It's not loud or obvious. It's subtle, but it shows up everywhere. First, peace becomes a stranger, not the kind that comes from a spa day or a vacation, the deeper peace that lets you sleep without restlessness and live without anxiety. When you're disconnected from your inner voice, you're constantly second-guessing everything. You don't feel anchored. You don't trust yourself. Life becomes a mental tug-of-war between what you should do and what you feel deep down, but can no longer hear clearly. Then comes the emptiness. Even in a crowd, even with achievements, there's this quiet question that won't go away. Why do I still feel unfulfilled? It's like eating junk food, temporarily full, but deeply unsatisfied. You try to fill the void with things, money, success, relationships, but nothing fits, because what you truly crave isn't more, it's meaning. You also begin to repeat patterns. The same types of people hurt you. The same mistakes resurface. It's not because you're cursed, it's because you're not learning the lessons being whispered to you. You keep walking in circles because you've tuned out the compass that was built to guide you forward. And the signs, they were always there. A gut feeling, a coincidence that didn't feel so random. But when you're spiritually deaf, you miss them. Or worse, you explain them away. So warnings go unheeded. Opportunities pass you by. The universe doesn't stop speaking. You just stop listening. Eventually, this silence begins to affect the people around you. Relationships suffer, not because you're a bad person, but because you're not showing up fully. Poor choices, emotional disconnection, selfish decisions, all flow from that same spiritual disconnection. When you can't hear your own soul, how can you truly connect with someone else's? These costs aren't written in bank statements or visible in mirrors, but they're felt in your heart, in your relationships, in the quiet moments when you're finally alone with yourself. And once you recognize them, you have two choices: continue numbing, or finally begin listening. It's like the difference between walking through life blindfolded versus seeing the world in high definition. One leaves you stumbling, unsure, reactive. The other fills your steps with clarity, purpose, and power. That's the contrast between being spiritually deaf and being spiritually awake. And the gap between them is life-changing. When you're spiritually deaf, you rely solely on external data. You chase goals because everyone else is chasing them. You follow routines, live by schedules, and make decisions that look good on the surface but feel hollow inside. You react to life instead of creating it. You feel lost, even when everything seems normal. Intuition feels distant. Signs from the universe go unnoticed. Every day starts to blend into the next like background noise. But when you wake up spiritually, it's like flipping a switch. You begin to feel your life instead of just thinking through it. Your choices align with something deeper. You don't need to seek constant validation because you trust your inner voice. Even when life gets messy, there's a strange calmness in your core, because you know you're guided, protected, and connected to something greater than yourself. One of the most painful parts of spiritual deafness is what it makes you miss. The whispers that could have saved you from heartbreak. The gut feelings that tried to steer you away from bad deals, fake friends, or wrong paths. The dreams that tried to remind you of your purpose. You miss yourself, the real you underneath the noise, fear, and distractions. Spiritual awakening doesn't mean your life becomes perfect. It means it becomes real. You start seeing people differently. You understand pain more deeply, but you don't fear it anymore. You live with intention instead of impulse. Life begins to feel like a dialogue, not just a monologue. You stop begging for signs because you start noticing them. In one state, you sleepwalk through life. In the other, you wake up to it. And the only thing standing between the two is your willingness to listen. The voice has always been there. It's not about finding it. It's about removing what's been blocking it all along. Every person is born with a unique path, a purpose designed only for them. But when you're spiritually deaf, that path gets blurry. Not because it disappeared, but because you stopped listening to the voice that was meant to guide you toward it. Growth isn't just about age or experience. True personal growth happens when you evolve in alignment with your soul. But when you're disconnected spiritually, that growth slows down or completely stalls. You may change jobs, meet new people, or even achieve success, but inside you're still stuck in the same patterns. The lessons life is trying to teach you, they get missed. And so life repeats itself again and again until you finally pay attention. Then there's the quiet tragedy of missed moments, not just chances to succeed, but moments that could have reshaped your life. That one conversation you avoided, that intuitive nudge you ignored, that idea that came to you in silence, but felt too crazy to chase. These aren't coincidences. They're invitations. And when you're spiritually deaf, you decline them without even knowing. You close doors before they open. The blessings meant for you pass by. Not because you weren't worthy, but because you weren't listening. And the greatest loss, not stepping into who you were truly meant to be. Every soul carries a calling, a mission uniquely woven into their being. But that calling doesn't shout, it whispers. It appears in your passions, your pain, your dreams, and the things that stir your heart. If you're too distracted, too skeptical, too disconnected, you miss the sign. You spend your life chasing things that don't fulfill you, climbing ladders that don't matter, building a version of success that feels empty at the top. Destiny isn't a finish line, it's a path. But to walk it, you need to be able to hear where it's leading. Otherwise, you spend your life following maps made for someone else. You were never meant to live on autopilot. You were meant to create, to rise, to serve something far bigger than yourself. And the first step toward that, silencing the noise so you can finally hear where your destiny is calling you to go. Healing begins with silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness. The world is loud, fast, demanding, but your spirit, it speaks quietly. That's why the first step to restoring your spiritual hearing is learning how to be still, not rushing to fix everything, not distracting yourself with endless tasks, just sitting, breathing, listening. In that stillness, something sacred starts to emerge. You're aware. You'll notice things you missed before, like how your body feels when something's wrong, or how your heart responds when something's right. That's your spirit slowly coming back online, and to strengthen that connection, you need more than silence. You need sacred space. That's where practices like meditation or prayer come in. This isn't about religion, it's about intention. Meditation teaches you to observe your thoughts without being consumed by them. Prayer, on the other hand, invites a conversation with something greater than yourself. Both create space for the voice within to speak, and for you to actually hear it. 5 minutes a day can be more powerful than hours of mindless activity. It's not about time, it's about presence. Sacred texts and spiritual teachings are also powerful tools, not because they have all the answers, but because they remind you to start asking the right questions. Whether it's the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, teachings from Rumi, or Eckhart Tolle, these words carry timeless wisdom that reawakens your inner compass. You don't have to read to memorize, read to remember who you are. As your awareness deepens, something beautiful begins to happen. You become open again, open to signs, synchronicities, divine nudges. You'll start noticing patterns, recurring numbers, sudden clarity, or people who show up at just the right time. These aren't coincidences, they're communication. The universe has always been speaking. You just had to quiet the noise long enough to notice. Healing spiritual deafness is not about effort. It's about alignment. When you choose stillness, reflection, and intention, you naturally return to your center. You begin to live from your soul, not just your schedule. The voice is still there. It never left. And once you learn to listen again, life starts feeling different. Not perfect, but deeply, beautifully right. There's a moment in everyone's life where the silence becomes unbearable. Not the kind outside, but the kind inside. That's when your soul starts knocking, asking you to come back home, not to a place, but to yourself. You weren't created to live disconnected, lost in distractions, or chained to routines that don't nourish your spirit. Deep down you know this. You've felt the quiet ache. You've sensed that something is missing, even when everything looks fine from the outside. That ache isn't weakness. It's your wake-up call. It's your soul asking you to remember. You don't need to wait for a crisis to make a change, but that's what most people do. They ignore the whispers until life starts shouting. The job falls apart. The relationship breaks. The anxiety becomes unbearable. Only then do they stop and listen. But it doesn't have to be that way. God whispers before he shouts. Life always gives signs before storms. The subtle nudges, the gut feelings, the repeating thoughts that don't go away. These are not random. They're sacred signals. And if you've been feeling them lately, pay attention. They're not there to scare you. They're there to guide you. You haven't missed your chance. No matter how long you've been spiritually deaf, the voice within is still speaking. And the best part, you still have time to slow down, to get still, to reconnect, time to make different choices, to listen deeply, to live more intentionally. Your future hasn't been written in stone. It's being shaped right now by what you choose to ignore and what you choose to honor. So if anything inside you stirred while watching this, don't brush it off. Sit with it. Listen. Let that small inner voice lead you. Because that's where the peace is. That's where the clarity is. That's where your purpose is waiting. This is more than a message, it's a mirror. Look into it and ask yourself, am I truly listening to the voice that matters most? If not, now is the perfect moment to begin. Because it's never too late to come back to your soul, but it is too costly not to. Most people spend their entire lives chasing things they were never meant to catch. Success, validation, relationships, money, none of these are wrong, but when they become your compass instead of your tools, you start drifting. You begin to live a life that looks right, but feels completely wrong. And the saddest part, many never stop to question why. They just keep running, hoping the next milestone will finally make it all make sense. But deep down you already know the truth. You're not missing something out there. You're missing something here. There's a voice inside you. Quiet, steady and wise. It's been with you since the beginning. It's the one that told you not to trust that person. The one that urged you to try again even when you were scared. The one that whispered there's more when you felt stuck in an empty routine. That voice isn't your imagination. It's your soul. And when you ignore it long enough, you begin to forget who you really are. Spiritual deafness doesn't mean you're bad or broken. It means you've been overwhelmed, distracted, maybe even hurt. It means you've adapted to survive instead of listening to thrive. But survival isn't the goal of life. Alignment is. And you can't align with your true path if you can't hear where it's leading. This silence we're talking about, it doesn't always feel like suffering. Sometimes it feels like boredom. Other times it feels like overthinking, like never being able to rest. Sometimes it shows up as fake smiles, laughter that doesn't reach your eyes, or success that feels strangely empty. And the world will tell you to push through it, numb it, hustle past it. But your soul, it's inviting you to pause, to listen. Because when you start listening, you start healing. You begin to notice the patterns you've been repeating and the opportunities you've been missing. You begin to forgive yourself for the times you didn't know better. And slowly, you return to who you were always meant to be. Not a version shaped by the world, but a version awakened by truth. This journey back to your spirit won't happen overnight, but it starts with a simple decision to stop looking out there for answers that have always been in here. Your intuition, your inner compass, your connection to the divine. It's not gone, it's just waiting to be remembered. So ask yourself right now, what's one thing in your life that doesn't feel aligned? What's one thing you've been ignoring, suppressing, or brushing off as just a feeling? Start there. Sit with it. Don't analyze it. Just feel it. And you'll notice something surprising. The more you listen, the more you'll hear. The more you trust, the more guidance will come. Life will start making sense again. Not because everything changes outside, but because you've changed inside. You were never meant to walk blindly through life. You were meant to walk boldly with clarity, with confidence, with conviction. And you don't need anyone else's approval to start doing that. You just need the courage to listen to the one voice that knows you best, your own. You still have time to pause, time to realign, time to rebuild from the inside out. And the fact that you've made it to the end of this message, that is a sign. That is your soul saying, I'm still here. Let's begin again. So don't wait for life to shout. Don't wait for breakdowns or regrets. Start listening now, while it's still a whisper, because that whisper, it just might lead you to the life you were always meant to live.